Hi, this is Fabi Martinez, and I am going to talk to you some more about Stitch Composer. I think this is probably about video number 5, maybe it's 4. Anyway, it doesn't really matter, but the reason I decided I would do this video is because I just want to really reinforce some of the things that I have learned about creating good stitches in the program. Now, I first of all want to start off by telling you that I've got this image on the screen, which is my inspiration for today's lesson. And where I got this from was I was watching a webinar online the other day, and it was put on by a different sewing machine company rather than Janome. But anyway, the purpose of that webinar was to talk about how they were able to use all of the decorative stitches that came on their sewing embroidery machines and taking them into their editing mode, and they were able to use those stitches as embroidery designs. Now, we can do basically the same thing, kind of, sort of, in the Janome world. The difference is that in some of the other machine companies, every single decorative stitch that they have on their sewing machine is also available on the embroidery side. And we don't have that luxury in the Janome world. I do want to show you that there are several stitches that are available. Oh, I think I forgot to open the document. So this is a document that I created using all of the images that came in the Horizon Link Suite program that are also STX files. Now remember, when we are using Stitch Composer and we are creating stitches in that program, we are making STX files. So this is the difference that I was talking about. In other sewing machine companies, they include all the stitches, and in Janome, they haven't given us all the stitches. This is what comes from the built-in categories on the machine, just right here. So we've got several, a few from applique, we've got several from decorative, et cetera, all the way on down the line to the quilting category. The satin stitch category only had one. All right, so that was one of the deficiencies, I would say, about how we were not prepared for being able to do the same thing on our machines. I'm going to show you another document. However, this is the one from the AccuStitch program. Now, AccuStitch is a program that we can buy for about $35 in the US, and it is a pretty snazzy little program, and it came with many of the same stitches that are in the Horizon Link Suite program, but with a few other additions. Now, if you were to compare these two charts, you know, the Horizon Link Suite one with the AccuStitch one, you're going to see that there are some duplicates. They most of the time don't have the same stitch number on them, so it can get to be a little confusing, but there are some decorative stitches available. When would we have used these? Well, we would have used them over in our Horizon Link Suite. I think I've got a window open here. Yes. Embroidery link tool. You know that the embroidery link tool is where we can pick an embroidery hoop. Oop, I messed up with that one there. Use our various embroidery designs to send them over to our embroidery machine and doing some simple editing to them. It's really a very nice program. I've done several videos on this portion of the program as well. But one of the sections that sometimes is overlooked is the Convert STX file section. Now, this was the original precursor to AccuStitch. So converting STX files, what is it? STX files, remember, are machine stitches on the sewing side of the machine created in Stitch Composer program. And we could do some simple things with them. Actually, we could do quite a bit with them, but for right now, I'm just going to show this. You know, these were some of the built-in ones that came with the program. As I mentioned a little while ago, we're in the pictograph category. Pictograph number 1 was this little heart. If I open it up here and I say that I want to create a design with it, I could make it into, you know, lines, vertical or horizontal. I could have chosen the circle tool up here instead. But right now, what I'm going to do is just show you one little cycle of this. So I just tick mark the number of cycle. I just put number 1 in here and I said convert. Now remember here too, we can change the pattern sizes up to 20% wider and 20% longer or shorter or narrower. So we can set all these designations right here prior to saying convert. All right, so it came into the screen right here. I'm just going to say close. And again, you know, all I'm doing is I'm just showing you that this was a sewing side of the machine stitch. It has now become an embroidery stitch. That's part of what the beauty is with the STX files. And it's very similar to what the other brand machines are also doing. We are taking sewing stitches and we are turning them into embroidery stitches. So it really expands our ability to be creative with our decorative stitches. Now, this was the stitch that I was working on a little while ago, and I'm going to show you how I even came about getting to this point. Remember that this was my original image. I thought it was really creative of them. You know, they made a circle out of it. They created a little inner border, and the hearts are facing inward, and then they did a larger outer border, and the hearts are facing outwards. And it was just a real, very simple but effective quilt block design that they did. So what did I do? Well, I actually started off, because I have the luxury of doing so, by using my Hatch digitizing program. And what I did here is I created myself a motif stitch of that very same heart. What I did is I actually opened up the image that I had clipped from the webinar, and I opened it up here in my software program, and using this is how I came about creating these little hearts. What I next did with this, now this is the place where you all can get very creative with how we gather images for ourselves. Now this one here, all I did was I used the snipping tool on that is a built-in tool in all of our Microsoft computers. If you don't know where this is at, just go down to the search bar down in here and type in snip tool, and it will show you where it's at, and then you can pin it to your taskbar and use it whenever you want to. So I did a new little screen, kind of gets a little bit dull looking, and I get this little crosshair cursor sort of thing on my attached to my mouse, and I can just draw myself a rectangle around this. I'm going to try to keep it a little bit symmetrical. And then I can save this somewhere on my computer where later on I can then open it and I can use this as a backdrop image in Stitch Composer. Pretty snazzy. Now you can do the very same thing with lots of different images. I'm going to give you a brief little look at my picture folder here. Because this is a picture folder that I have opened up on this is a picture gallery viewing tab. I think what I'll do here is instead of showing you there, I think I will come over here and show you this. Quickly find it. All right, it's in my Horizon Link Suite, My Stuff folder, and I've got a folder for my stitches, a folder where I have collected stitch pictures. And these are a lot of little snips that I have done, and then I've gotten them from various places on the internet, as well as the actual stitch outs. I used to have another brand of a sewing machine, and on that machine, I had stitched out every single decorative stitch. And many of these, that's what these are here, is I took a close-up picture of them, and then I made little snips, just like I showed you a while ago, that I was able to bring into Stitch Composer and create those very same stitches because I don't have them on my current machines. Different places where I've gotten images as well is been just looking at, let me just see, maybe this was a project that I had gotten from a FOF project gallery thing, and they had used a decorative stitch that was kind of the same but different than anything that I had had. So I just took a snip of that picture in their project, and I'm using that to make a stitch out. Here's one here that I want to draw your attention to. This is a built-in stitch on our machine. You'll recognize it, I'm sure. I think that it comes from the quilting category, and I believe that the original stitch is this one right here, where if we were stitching it out, it starts off with a curved edge. You know how I can tell actually which one it actually is I will look at that one in my Horizon Link Suite pattern combo tool. Let's take a look. Pattern combo tool is a pretty neat little tool that we have. I'm not going to do a whole tutorial on this or anything, but check it out sometime. Every single decorative stitch that we've got on our sewing machine is here in this program. It is here we've got decorative stitches. Every single decorative stitch is here. We cannot change whether is in these folders here. This is built in. We can't take anything out of it. We can't add anything to it. These are not STX files. These are ORD files for ordinary stitches. All right, but I'm going to see if I can find that one that I was just talking about. I think, I'm not sure which category it came in. I think it might have come, nope, definitely not bridge, right? Don't think it was decorative. I think it might be quilting, actually. Let's see. Do we find that that fan here somewhere? Oh dear. I don't know which category it's in. Oh, here it is, right here. All right, so this is the way that it comes in as it is in the sewing machine. All right. And I know that when I looked at this stitch, there have been some projects that I wanted to use this stitch on, but I would rather have had it start from the curvy edge. And so what I did, thankfully, this is one of the stitches that comes as an STX file. Now, I can't tell you right now without looking back at my Word documents. Was it in AccuStitch or was it in, see if it was in quilting. No, I think it might have been in the original Horizon Link Suite program. Was it? Let's see. Yeah, here it is right here. It was quilt number 24 in Horizon Link Suite as an STX file. So what I was able to do with that was because it was an STX file, I opened it up in Stitch Composer and I just flipped it so that I made it look in the direction like I wanted it to look. So here it is. I will show it to you real quickly. Here under ordinary patterns, if I come all the way down to here, if I had my computer connected to my sewing machine, I could send any little stitch combination that I created over here. I'll just put one together really quickly. Actually, this is what I'm going to do. I'll open up my created stitch folder because this one right here is a folder that will reach into my computer to a place where I am able to then come and gather some of these stitches and use them in this ORD function. Hope that's not confusing you, but here is this little fan somewhere here. Does anybody see it? There's been a couple of things that I've altered that were from the original. So here it is here. So the original was called Quilting 63. So I call this one Quilt 63B, right? And you can see here that it's just the reverse image of it. And that's one of the neat things about the included stitches, that if we find something, for example, like maybe even that little heart that I was thinking about a while ago. This one right here that came in, this one right here. Let's just say, for example, that we love this little stitch here. Now I'm looking at it here in this little program, but what I'm really referring to is that we could take this image because it's also one of the STX files, and let's just say that we wanted it to have maybe no leaves, or maybe we wanted to alter the shape of these little leaves or something. We could open this in STX and we could alter that also. So it's kind of a neat little function here. This is the pattern combo tool. So whatever I select right here and put this as a little stitch combination, I could then write this onto my USB. I could take it to the sewing machine and stitch it out as a decorative stitch pattern. It's a pretty neat little program. All right, but that's not what we were going to be talking about basically. That was just talking about using one of the built-in STX files and modifying it, which we will look at modifying some stitches in a minute because that's what this video is really going to be about. How I got there was just talking about different stitches and how I've acquired some of the different ones. You know, this was a little image of this little bunny right here. I saw this somewhere, don't even remember where, and I just turned on my snip tool because I love little bunny rabbits, and I decided I would stitch this out as a decorative stitch. And I copied that image from somewhere on the internet and I made it into a stitch file also. So different places that you can find your designs to work from. All right, so that's how I got this one. I worked at it from my digitizing program. Then I came over to my Stitch Composer program. And I'm going to tell you, I've got two Stitch Composer programs. You can see now that I'm hovering over this little image down here that you see two of them here on the screen. The first program is the one that came with Horizon Link Suite. The second one is the one that came with AccuStitch. Now I'm going to open my AccuStitch screen just briefly to show you. It's an advanced version of Convert STX. And with this one here, we've got all kinds of different shapes that we can use. If you've never played with this before, this program is really very inexpensive. The reason that I really particularly like it too is because the Stitch Composer program is a superior program to the one that came with Horizon Link Suite. They haven't updated that one and they're never going to because the machine is now retired, but it's just a little bit easier to use than the original one in the 15,000 machine. And that one is greatly improved over the one that came with the 12,000 machine, I should say. All right, so anyway, so that's why I've got able now to have two Stitch Composer programs open. This one right here is a Stitch file that I just recently created, and I'm going to walk you through the steps of how I digitize this, but I'm going to do it in the other Stitch Composer program. That's not confusing you, is it? Hopefully not, because this one here, I want to start from scratch. Now, when we look at the screen, we've gone through all of this before in previous videos. We know that when we start digitizing a Stitch Composed design, we always need to start at the 0 mm vertical line. All right, and then we can just make our stitch pattern as long as we want to, going toward the right, because that's the direction that the machine is stitching. All right, now when we convert these STX files into an embroidery design, you know, different things can happen with them, and actually it's pretty neat how it all works together. So we're going to go ahead and come into the View tab. We're going to go ahead and find that backdrop image that I was just showing you that I had made over in my Hatch program. I think I called it, yep, Loopy Heart. And I'm going to open it. So here it is on the screen. And the first step that I like to do when I am going to start playing around with this little image is I like to try to get the starting point. And in this case, it's this inner edge of that image, right? What I want to do with it is I want to get that beginning stitching point right here on the 0. So I'm going to go ahead and use this, and I'm going to try to drop it on down as much as I can so that I'm down here at the bottom of the grid and at the 0 here. Then my next step is that I'm going to use this little handle, and I'm going to try to make this as big and tall as the grid is. Make sure that it stays down here at the bottom as well. Oop, didn't intend to hit that. I got a little bit mouse crazy. All right, now we're there and we're as tall. Now this is the original size of this image. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and see how well this design actually stitches out if I leave this image in the proportion that it is currently. Now, the reason why I want to go through this exercise is because the main thing about learning to create a stitch and having it stitch out beautifully is that we have to go through some trial and error regarding stitch lengths and how long the overall stitch pattern is and that kind of thing. Okay, so given that, what I want you to now pay attention to is, and I know I've mentioned this before, each one of these little squares on the screen is 1 millimeter. The maximum of this direction right here is the width of our sewing machine stitch. Now we know on a 15,000 and many of the other upper end Janome machines, they are 9 millimeter machines, which basically means that we should have 9 millimeters of space to create our stitches in. But unfortunately, this is just a little bit shy of that. It actually is more like about 8.4 millimeters wide rather than the full 9. You know, all in all, it doesn't make that much of a difference. Just thought I better mention it to you. But each one of these little grids that's got all the little teeny weeny squares inside of it, we're going to zoom in now, 1 millimeter, little bitty. So remember that when we are plotting our stitches here, or digitizing our stitches, whatever term you want to use, don't make them too short, because if you make them too short, you're just going to end up with a bunch of stitches piling up on top of one another. It's going to create stitching problems at your machine, and maybe even causing bird nests or, you know, thread breakage, could even punch holes in your fabric, that kind of problem. So remember, don't go too short. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to kind of keep that in mind, that as I start to plot these stitches here, that I think I'm going to try to keep them at about 2 millimeters. In other words, 2 full squares, okay? And the other thing that I want to do is, as I look at my design, is I'm thinking about embroidery thread, and I'm thinking about how do I think I want this design to stitch out. I've already made up my mind that I'm going to have this be a triple run right in through here, and coming back down around here will also be a triple run. These here are going to be sort of a satin stitch. I know already, because of my experience with doing this in Stitch Composer, that I cannot make these stitches as close together as they are here on the image. You know, our sewing machine stitches quite differently on the sewing side than it does in the embroidery side. So on my Hatch program, this stitch spacing is perfectly adequate for an embroidery design. It's not going to be adequate for a Stitch Compose design. I'll tell you that right off the bat. Okay, so given that, let's go ahead and let's start digitizing some of these stitches here. And I'm going to come to the Home tab, make sure that none of these are selected, and I'm just going to start by putting my first stitch on stitch point number 1. And I'm just going to remember that I'm doing this as a triple run, so that's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, about up in here, 1, 2, 3. Now I don't have to be precise, you know, I'm just going to kind of eyeballing it here. I'm not going to play a whole lot with my stitch points at this point in time. So here I'm going to be starting to swoop upward. So my 2 millimeters, oh, you know, it's going to be somewhere around up and over here for my, how I'm getting around over here. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to start my satin stitches. So I'm going to move up on my grid a little bit, and just kind of remembering that I'm just going to sort of free form it around here. I'm going to do the first part of this top part of the heart here. And you know, I'm just kind of keeping in mind that it is a satin stitch, but I don't want it to be too close together. And I'm just going to come all the way around to, I think I will stop here. Actually, I think I'm going to stop here. All right. So now I'm going to show you a tool that makes digitizing a whole lot easier. And I may end up having to come back in here in a little while and move some of these stitch points. But for right now, I'm not going to fuss with that, okay? Because what I want to show you is that, you know, when you're in the View tab here, you've got a choice of either having your stitch numbers show or not show. And in this case, we do want the stitch number showing. So if you don't have that selected on your screen, make sure that it is turned on. Because what I'm going to use are some functions over here on the Home tab where I am going to copy and paste some of these stitch points. All right, and which are the ones I want to copy and paste? Well, I'm going to start copying at stitch number 20, and I'm going to end at stitch number 33. All right, so over here on the stitch point list, I am going to start with stitch number 20. I'm holding down my shift key, and I'm holding down all the way to number, not 33, not 34. I made a boo-boo there. Actually, it's a 33, so it's 20 through 33. I'm now going to come up here and I'm just going to say copy. Now, you don't know, but if I were to say paste, like we normally would on other programs, I'm just going to do this just so that you can see the message that's going to come up. It's going to tell me that I need to select the position that I want to paste these at. All right, so I'm just going to say, okay. So where do I want to paste them? I want to paste them after 34. So now I'm going to select 34, and now I will hit paste. You'll see that my stitch point list has increased greatly. And you're going to see on the screen that I've got these little wonky stitches right here. Because what it did is it gave me an exact image of these previous ones right here. What do I want to do with these ones? I want to select from stitch number 36. I think it'll be 36. Maybe it'll be 35. I'll experiment a little bit from 35 on down to 48, which is the last one that's over here. I'm going to vertical mirror them. Just click on that. And now it has turned them back around over to this place here. I don't know exactly what happened in the middle, if it was adequate or not. Good thing to do right at this point would be to come in and turn off the stitch numbers. Maybe zoom in here a little bit and just see if you liked all the way that the stitch points all turned out. I think for right now, they're probably okay. I could come in and I could adjust probably these right in here. So if I came and turned on my little tab there, I think I'm just going to move that over a smidgen and that one over a little bit. So it's not too tight right in there. Turn that off. Now the next thing that I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and come on back and down and around and complete this next side of the little heart. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to come back looking at my stitch point numbers because that's very important. I know I'm going to want to come and copy and paste everything from number 1 all the way up to number 20. All right, so we'll do the same thing. Come to the stitch point list over here, hold down the shift key, 1 through 20, home tab, copy them. Come on down to number 48 because it was the last one over here, number 48, and we paste them after that one. Ooh, but that doesn't look right either, does it? Remember why? It's because we have to select everything from 49 all the way through 68, 49 through 68, and we're going to vertical mirror it. All right, so you know it kind of came out a little bit too close over here, and I think I know the reason why. Yeah, I know the reason why that happened, but you know what? I think it still might stitch out okay. I'm going to turn on the simulation and let's go ahead and see how this stitches. Notice down here on the bottom of the screen, we're going to find out how that looks over there. It's a little bit off. I may have wanted to move those over a little bit. Okay, so let's go back home. Let's undo and undo. All right, so it ended at 48. I think what I need to do, yeah, let's try doing this from 48 through 20 again. Copy. Paste. I don't know what just happened. Oh, you know what? I still had all those other stitches in there. I did the wrong ones. Oops, I better fix that. The ones I wanted to work on actually was the 1 through 20, right? All right, so I have selected them and I am copying them, going to paste them after 48. Let's see if that fixes it any. And then I'm going to go with 49 through 60, and I'm going to vertical mirror them. And they still are coming out a little bit wonky. I don't know what I just did there. Maybe, I don't really know. Going to have to keep tweaking at this. Sometimes it takes a little bit more time than I'm intending. So my next step is that I want to duplicate this first part of the swoop to come down and be the second part of this one. What I'm going to do is make that a little smaller so we can see the whole screen. There we go. So what do I want? I want stitches from number 1 all the way up to number 20. I think that's what I want. So let's try that, okay? 1, holding down shift key through 20. Let's go ahead and copy them. Let's select number 48 because we want it to come in after 48. And let's paste them. All right, I think I may get a duplicate on this one right here, but if I do, I can just come in and I can delete one of them. All right, so we want everything now from 49 through 68. I believe that will be the ones we want. 49 through 68. Let's vertical mirror them. Yeah, it's still coming in a little bit kooky over here. Let's go ahead and turn off our stitch numbers so we can see a little bit clearer right in here. You know, sometimes I even like to turn off the grid line so I can see what's going on right here. So I can see that I've got more stitches in here than I have over on this side. So, you know, playing around with some of these things, you know, was part of the game here with learning how to do all of this. Another thing we could actually physically do is we could just come in here and we could move everything over a couple of notches, right? So if we turned on our grid lines and came to the home screen and used our point move tool, and we could come in here and we could get rid of some stuff that we don't necessarily need anymore. We could even add in stitches. Ooh, I'm going the wrong direction. Yeah, so this one here, I think I'm going to cut it. Can't do it while this is on though. Let's go ahead and move some of these over. Let's move them over two little notches. Two little notches, right? You got to take all of them with them and you have to do it one at a time, which is kind of a little slow right here, but I don't want to go too fast. We can actually select all of them if we knew our stitch numbers, and we could move them all at one time using this point move and highlighting. Okay, so that actually looks pretty good right there. Other than this, I don't know what's happening there. And I don't want to fuss too much with it, but you know how it is. What the problem is stitch number 49 doesn't need to be there. So let's find it here in the stitch point list, number 49, and let's go ahead and cut it. Yeah, now I think things are looking a little bit more similar. The other thing that I'm noticing is that over on this side here, I've got a triple run. The way I know that is it's 46, 47, 48. So this would be 49, 50, 51. So I've got a triple stitch going on in here that I don't have over here. This one is 19, 20, and then it goes on to 21. So let's go ahead and let's insert a stitch here. Again, it's just one of those neat little tools that we have. Find its stitch point, first of all, number 19. And then what we're going to do is we're going to insert. So what happens here is that the image, if you look closely at this, it's going to be kind of hard to tell, but this is the new version of Stitch Composer, and everything that's after this stitch. So this has been highlighted in red, and you may not notice it because you can still see all the stitch points here, but they've kind of changed in their appearance. And in between here, you can see little bitty running lines. Turn off the grid so that you can see that a little better. See that? So that is showing us that the stitches that I'm going to be inserting, it kind of gives us a little image of where we're going. So 19 has been selected, and I'm inserting stitches. So I'm going to go 20, 21, 22, and then I'm going to hit insert again, and it's inserting without a shift. Notice that, which means that it's just inserting those stitches right where I wanted them. So that's going to give us a little bit smoother look there as well. All right, so turn our grid back on. So I've got a stitch pattern here. You know, let's go ahead and watch it stitching out. Don't know exactly how well that looks, but we're going to come to our home screen. We'll add a lock stitch, which completes the stitch. And as it's simulating now, it will go ahead and it will loop and continue on sewing. So let's go ahead and write this onto the USB stick. I'm going to take it to my machine and I'm going to stitch it out and we'll see what we've got. All right, so here we are. Here's the stitch. And you know, I actually think it did pretty well. Now, this has been greatly magnified here, right? So one thing I want you to take notice of is that the stitches, like I've been talking about, they're pretty short. Remembering these are all about 2 millimeters long, and it is a triple run. These are sort of a little satin stitch right in through here. I want you to take notice of the weave of the cloth here and what the stitches are actually doing to the cloth. This is a pretty good quality Kona cotton. You know, not the highest quality, but Kona is pretty well known for being a good, sturdy 100% cotton fabric. And it is backed with some tearaway stabilizer, about a medium weight. It's also lightly starched, and this is how it all stitched out. So I think it looks fairly good. Um, the next thing that I think that I probably would want to do is go ahead and modify this just a little bit more. Now remember that, let's see, this is one that I made first of all. And I did this one based on the fact that typically what I have learned about using Stitch Composer is that you usually need to make the stitches a lot longer in length. The entire stitch pattern is what I'm referring to. You usually need to make that quite a bit longer than what you think you might need it to be. So let's open up the other Stitch Composer. This is this one here. This is that stitch. No, that's actually not that stitch. But anyway, this stitch here is the one we just created, and I brought it in with the image at its original size, and I went ahead and I plotted the stitches. And you know, when I look at this image, this one here is a little bit too stretched out. That was my version 1. The one that I just now did is a little bit too squishy. So I'm going to find a better balance. Remember that I've always said too that you always need to practice stitching your stitch immediately after you have composed it. Don't save it on your computer until you know that it's something that you like. Otherwise, you're going to have this very confusing mess of lots of kind of sort of the same stitches, and it will get to be a little bit confusing for you in your filing system. So take the time when you are making stitch compose stitches, make sure that you've got plenty of time to actually design them, sit at your machine, stitch them, come back to the computer, fix them if needed until you get the exact look that you want. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do now with this stitch too. Back to Stitch Composer. Here it is. What am I going to do next? I think I'm going to zoom out. So this one here, the original one that I made that I showed you the picture of in pink, actually it was the green one. This green one here, I made this at 16 millimeters long. This one here, I made it at 11 because that was the default of the program, of the picture when I brought it in. I'm going to try one at maybe 13, 14, somewhere around in there. And I'll be back when I get that one done. Okay, so this is one I decided that instead of going too long, you know, like I said, the first one was all the way out at 16. Second one was at about 11. This one here, 14. And do you want to see my stitch out? I will show you. It's right here. So let's zoom in on that a little bit more. I call this one, this was a Goldilocks success. Little too long, little too short. This one here is just right. So with this particular stitch pattern, little bit of experimenting, didn't take a tremendous amount of time because it's a fairly simple stitch pattern. I discovered that 16 millimeters for this one was too long. 11 millimeters, which was the size of my image, was a little bit too short and squishy. When I took it up to 14 millimeters, and I still made an effort to kind of keep all of these stitch lengths the same. I still kept them at 2. You're going to see that I've got pretty much the same exact thing going on with each one of these. At 14 millimeters, it looks pretty darn good. I like that a lot. Okay, so what have we learned today? We have learned in Stitch Composer, this is my most recent one here, experimenting, right? That's the number one thing. The next thing is I just want to go over a review of some of the tools that we used. We used, you know, selecting certain stitch points here on the pattern and doing copying and pasting and then selecting where it was that we needed to paste them into on the stitch point list was then how we pasted them in. Then we would select those very same ones if we needed to make a mirror image of them, and we were able to vertical mirror them. So it saved us a lot of time, and it also kept our design symmetrical because this is a symmetrical pattern. So it kind of saved us quite a bit of time actually, rather than having to move too many stitch points. You know, that does take a little bit of practice, and it does take some, you know, fine tuning. Like I said before, you know, kind of taking a look at here and saying, well, it didn't go quite right, and where do we fix things at? All right, so another thing that I just wanted to show real quickly, and again, it's using some of the tools. I'm going to start with a new screen. I think I'm going to do this one here. Start with a new screen. Do I want to save the changes? No, I don't really need to. And why don't I need to? Because this was too squishy. Don't want to save it. So I'm going to say no. And I'm going to come and I'm going to open a stitch. Now let's see, it's going to be, I'm going to have to try to find where these are at. So that will take just a second. Sometimes it takes me a while to find what I'm looking for. And the reason why is because I couldn't remember, even though I had just said it a little while ago, this particular stitch that came built into the machine as well as into the Convert STX file of Horizon Link Suite was in the quilt category. So how do we find these stitches? You know, I'm just going to back up a little bit because it's quilt number 22. And I'm going to say open so that it's already on my screen before I fuss with this anymore. So when you want to open a stitch, remember that you've got to know where it is that you're looking in your computer. So in my case here, Horizon Link Suite on my computer is installed here I can find the stuff that's in it in the libraries. So if I select this right here, it's in my documents. In my documents is where I've got my Horizon Link Suite program. When I open this up, and I come on down to some of the folders that are in here. Under the stitches category, it's where I've got these stitches, and this was in one of these categories, right? So sometimes you just have to look around and turn on your preview screen so that the preview button right here, make sure that's turned on so that as you're scrolling through these, you can see the stitches that are here. Look how many of them are here that you could open up, physically open, and alter them if you wanted to. Can be quite fun, and it's actually a good experiment. Just make sure that when you do this that you save them in a different folder and with a different name. Cancel. We're going to work on this one here. This is the one I was talking about a while ago that I wanted it flipped in the other direction, remember? So what would I do to this one? First of all, I would come to the home button and I would get rid of some of the stitches. See here the loop and the end? So this loop is actually the physical last stitch of this stitch pattern. And so anything after this, I can actually select and I can delete. How do you delete them? You have to use the cut button on the toolbar. You don't get to just use your delete button on your keyboard. I know, it's a little bit strange. So here we go with this stitch. I'm going to make the screen a little bigger. Let's watch it stitch out real quickly. Here it is down here. Okay, there it is. All right, so what did I want to do with it? All I wanted to do was flip it. So it's really simple. I'm going to just start with, now this is one of those times when it may not let me select stitch number 1. Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. I don't really know the reason why. Can't give you an explanation. Come back to the Home tab and make sure everything is highlighted here in the stitch point list. And let's go ahead and vertical mirror it. Yep, it doesn't want number 1. See, I told you. But yet, when I was composing my own stitch a while ago, it let me keep it. Okay, whatever. Vertical mirror. Now we've got a mirror image of it. Pretty slick. What I can do now is I can add a lock stitch. And we've now got a new stitch pattern. Isn't it curious? Look what's happening down here. You know the reason why is because over here under extra settings, we might need to change some things. Yes, in this little toolbox right here. And right now, the stitch spacing is set at 0. So if let's make it all the way up to 1, see what happens. Spaced out a little bit more, not quite enough. Let's make it a little bit bigger. 1.5. Looks like it's almost there. See this? It's still overlapping just a little bit. Now, why is this happening here? You know, I really can't tell you. I don't really know. 2 is too much. Let's go with 1.8. That's about right. Actually, I think I know the reason why on this one. Stitch number 1 needs to be here. Looks like it's jumping all the way out here. Okay, so anyway, this might take a little bit more work than what I want to spend time on right now, but just wanted to show that to you pretty briefly about how that works. So the spacing about 1/7 actually looks about right. I would just need to come in here and figure out what are the stitch points that need a little bit of assistance for how this is all working together. Okay, so a couple of different things we've demonstrated today using some of the built-in tools, the caution about stitch pattern being too short or too long and why you need to practice stitching them on well-stabilized fabric. And then just this little tip here about using some of the built-in stitches and maybe doing some very simple editing to them so that you've got a little variety of stuff. Okay, this is Fabi Martinez. I really appreciate you watching the video and I hope it was helpful. Bye for now.